We saw in the last video that the coordinates of a point on the first quadrant of the unit circle are given by cos theta sine theta. Theta is measured anti-clockwise from the positive x-axis. We just looked at the x and y values of this point using trigonometry, just using basic trigonometry of a right angled triangle. So for example, if theta is 60 degrees, then the coordinates of this point are cos theta sine theta. So the cos of 60 is 0.5, the sine of 60 is 0.866. Now we're going to consider points on the second quadrant of the unit circle. So we're going to be looking at angles theta lying between 90 and 180 degrees. The coordinates of any point on the unit circle are defined to be cos theta sine theta. So let's take a point in the second quadrant. So we simply define the coordinates of this point to be cos theta sine theta. We can't work this out like in the previous video because it doesn't make sense to talk about sides opposite or adjacent to this angle here. Theta here is an obtuse angle. It's not part of a right angle triangle. So this is just a definition. Let's take an example. Suppose that theta is 120 degrees. Then the coordinates of this point are cos 120, sine 120. We can see that the cos of 120 degrees is minus 0.5. The sine of 120 degrees is 0.866. So now, by defining the coordinates of this point as cos theta sine theta, we can see that we get negative values for these ratios. We get a negative value for the cos function. We also get a negative value for the tan function actually. Tan is got by dividing sine by cos. 0.866 divided by minus 0.5 is minus 1.7321. Let's look at this right angle triangle here. The acute angle in this right angle triangle is 180 minus 120, which is 60 degrees. This means that we can actually relate the cos and sine of 120 degrees to the cos and sine of 60 degrees. What we can do is reflect this point through the y-axis. We see that the point 0.5, 0.866 is the image of this point under axial symmetry in the y-axis. Of course, if we reflect angle A through the y-axis, we get the same angle out here, which I'm calling A prime. So this angle here is also 60 degrees, of course. But we know that the coordinates of this point are cos 60, sine 60. So the cos of 60 is 0.5. The sine of 60 is 0.866. So we see that the sine of 60 degrees and the sine of 120 degrees are exactly the same. They're equal to plus 0.866. However, the difference between the cos of 60 degrees and the cos of 120 degrees is the sign of the value. Cos of 60 is plus 0.5, cos of 120 is minus 0.5. So we see that the only function that is positive for angles in the second quadrant is the sine function. For that reason, we often call this quadrant the S quadrant. Of course, we know that for the first quadrant, all the functions are positive. So for acute angles, cos, sine and tan are positive. So we often call this quadrant A for all functions positive.